All right, well, welcome to this week's video. This week we are going to learn one of several methods to make flying geese. This is my particular favorite method to make 4 identical flying geese out of just 2 squares of fabric. So here we go. Here's what a flying geese looks like. We're going to make 4 out of 2 squares of fabric. Let's first of all go over the things that are standard to all of my patterns. So as a general rule, you know that my measurements are exact. I don't normally write my patterns for you to trim after making something. This is an exception. In this one, you will make it slightly over and trim it down. So I'm telling you right now, this is an exception to that rule. Also that I have a distinct dislike for sewing unsupported bias seams, which is why I have you cut squares instead of triangles. We're not having any unsupported bias seams. And another big thing, important thing to know is that standard practice for all quilters, not just me, but for all quilt writers, is that we base our measurements on the finished size of the piece, not of the unfinished size. So the finished size is the size you will see after it is sewn into your quilt or your bag or whatever you're sewing it into. So the unfinished size is 1/2 inch bigger all the way around each direction than the finished size, because there's a 1/4 inch seam allowance all the way around. Again, very rarely is there math based on the unfinished size. I will tell you when that is. That's not this time, although if you've seen other tutorials on this method, they will use the unfinished size. I took that off. It's an easy measurement. It really is. All right, so let's get started. Let's talk about the math. So a flying geese unit is not a square. Its finished size is twice as wide as it is tall. So this particular one is a 3 by 6 inch flying goose finished. Unfinished, it is 3.5 by 6.5. So it's the finished size that's twice as wide as it is tall. And that's an important thing to know. So here's how you do the math to figure out what to cut. Take the longest measurement of your desired finished size. In this case, this is a 3 by 6, so your longest measurement is 6 inches. Add 1.5 inches to that. Cut a square that is that size, and that will make the center, the large center triangle. If you cut a square that is 1.5 inches larger than the finished longest edge of your flying goose, okay? That's the first square. To make the small outer squares, take the measurement you just had, so 1.5 inches larger than your finished longest size, add another 1.5 inches to that, and that's going to be the size square you're going to cut to make the the 2 small outer triangles on each side. I'll put a screen up giving you the math, explaining it, and there is a PDF file you can download that will have all of these instructions. So now let's get started making these. Here is the written slide with all the written directions for your math. I'll leave it up here for 15 seconds. Feel free to pause the video to cut your squares. Here's my 2 squares. I am going to be making 3 inch by 6 inch flying geese with the white in the center and the dark brown on the outside. My white square is 7.5 inches, 1.5 inches longer than the 6 inch. And the brown square is 9 inches, so another 1.5 inches larger than the white square. Draw a single diagonal line on the back of the small square. Draw both diagonal lines on the front of the large square. This is to help you with the next step. Center the small square on top of the large square with right sides together. Use the diagonal lines on the large square to help you center the small one by making sure there is a point of the small square on a line of the large square. Sew a seam 1/4 inch on either side of the single diagonal line on the small square. Cut on the line. Open the pieces and press the seam allowance towards the large triangles. Draw a single diagonal line on the back of one of these new pieces that crosses the seam you've already made. Stack this piece on top of the other one, right sides together with the colors opposite. Note that you're lining up the outside edges, not the seams. It will look a little bit odd. Once again, sew 1/4 inch on either side of the drawn line. Cut on the line. Open the pieces and press the seam allowances towards the larger triangles. The seam allowances will twist between the smaller triangles. Now you need to trim your flying geese out of these two squares of fabric. The first way would be to use your favorite trim tool. I like the Creative Grids Ultimate Flying Geese tool. There will be a link in the description to that. You can also trim your flying geese out of your square with a regular ruler. Your first cut, you're going to lay the 45-degree line of your ruler on one seam line with the edge of the ruler 1/4 inch past the point of the flying geese. Cut along this edge of the ruler. There is a bit more math when finding the width of your flying geese to trim when using a regular ruler. First, take the longest edge of your finished size. In this case, it is a 3 by 6, so my longest edge is 6. Divide that by 2. In this case, I get 3, and then add 1/4 inch. That's your seam allowance. So now take that mark that you found. In my case, it's 3 1/4, and put that mark on the center point of the flying goose, and then cut along his edge, the 0 edge. I hope you had fun making our flying geese units, 4 identical flying geese out of just 2 squares of fabric. If you like this content, make sure you subscribe to my YouTube channel. Sign up for the newsletter on my website if you have not already. And we will see you next time. Thanks for watching.